Close your eyes for a second and picture this. It's 1955. The sun is setting over the Saigon River. A soft pink sky reflects on the water while hundreds of wooden sampans drift lazily past French riverfront villas. Tree-lined boulevards are filled with the gentle ringing of bicycle bells, the put-put-put of lambretta scooters, and the rhythmic creak of cyclos. Elegant women in silk dye glide by side saddle, holding parasols against the tropical sun. The air smells of jasmine, fresh baguettes, fish sauce, and a hint of opium smoke drifting from hidden doorways. This was Saigon, the city French writers called the Pearl of the Far East and the Paris of Asia. A place so intoxicating that pilots, spies, novelists, and soldiers from all over the world came here and never quite managed to leave. For some it was a battlefield, for others an escape, but for everyone who passed through, Saigon had a way of staying in the heart. But this same city has also survived absolute hell, 8 colonial rebellions, 2 Indochina wars, American B-52 bombers, North Vietnamese tanks rolling down these very streets on April 30th, 1975, 30 years of international embargo, and decades of poverty that followed. The postcards and romantic stories rarely show the nights of hunger, fear, and silence, but they were here too. And yet, somehow, she rose again. Today, those quiet boulevards have become rivers of 10 million motorbikes. The French villas hide behind glass skyscrapers that pierce the clouds. The Continental Hotel Terrace, where Graham Greene sipped gin and wrote The Quiet American, now looks out onto LED billboards and K-pop cafes. Old men who remember the war sit under the same tamarind trees, while teenagers film TikToks a few meters away. The city was officially renamed Ho Chi Minh City in 1976, but ask anyone, local, expat, or tourist, and they'll still call her Saigon. Because some names refuse to die. They live on in songs and old love stories, and in the way people talk about this place when they're far from home. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to walk the exact same street corners 100 years apart. We'll stand in front of the same buildings that have watched history unfold, some beautifully restored, others scarred by time, and a few replaced entirely by steel and glass. We'll read old street signs in French and new ones in Vietnamese. We'll compare the smell of croissants in 1930 with the smell of pho and fried chicken in 2025. And most importantly, we'll try to answer one question. In a city that changes faster than almost any other on Earth, how much of old Saigon's soul is still alive beneath the neon lights, the traffic chaos, and the endless construction cranes? So whether you're a history nerd, a Viet Kio missing home, or an American backpacker who just discovered this crazy beautiful country, grab yourself a Safi Suada, or an iced oat milk latte if you're watching from California. Sit back and let's go back in time. Long before anyone called it Saigon, this place was part of ancient Funan Kingdom in the 1st century AD, a bustling river port for Indian and Chinese traders. By the 7th century, it fell under Khmer Empire control, known as Pre Noker, meaning forest city in Khmer, a tiny fishing village surrounded by dense mangrove swamps, wild deer, crocodiles in the canals, and occasional raids from Cham pirates up the coast. The Khmer built small wooden temples and traded spices, ivory, and silk with merchants from as far as Persia. If you stood here back then, you wouldn't see skyscrapers or traffic lights, just thick jungle, muddy water, and the slow, patient rhythm of boats sliding along the river. In the early 17th century, Vietnamese lords from the north pushed south in the Nam Tien expansion. By 1623, it was a Khmer-Vietnamese mixed settlement. Then in 1698, Lord Nguyen Hue can officially claimed it for the Nguyen dynasty, renaming the area Gia Dinh and building the first Vietnamese citadel. Population at that time, maybe 5,000 souls, mostly fishermen, farmers, and a few Chinese immigrants running small shops along the riverbanks. Life was simple, wooden stilt houses over muddy waters, markets selling betel nuts and rice wine, and festivals honoring river spirits. At night, oil lamps flickered along the shore while drums and folk songs echoed across the dark water. But everything changed with European arrival. Fast forward to February 17, 1859. French and Spanish warships, commanded by Admiral Charles Rigault de Genlis, anchored in the Saigon River and bombarded the 8-sided Gia Dinh citadel for 3 straight days with over 2,000 cannon shells. The fortress, built in 1788 under Emperor Gia Long with Vauban-style star-shaped walls and bricks fired right here on the banks of the Saigon River, was reduced to smoking ruins. Vietnamese defenders, armed with spears and outdated muskets, fought bravely but lost over 1,000 men. You can almost imagine the smoke hanging over the river, the sound of cannons echoing for miles, and families huddled together, unsure if their city would survive the week. 3 years later, in the Treaty of Saigon signed June 5, 1862, Emperor Tu Duc was forced to cede 3 southern provinces, Bien Hoa, Gia Dinh, Din Tuong, and pay massive reparations. Saigon became the capital of French Cochinchina, the jewel in France's Indo-Chinese crown. The French didn't just occupy, they completely re-engineered the city on a grand scale. They drained 20 square kilometers of swamps using convict labor, dug the 2-kilometer Charner Canal, today's pedestrian Nguyen Hue Walking Street, filled in dozens of smaller canals to prevent malaria, planted over 10,000 tamarind and saw trees that still shade the downtown streets today, and laid out wide boulevards modeled after Baron Haussmann's redesign of Paris, complete with gas lamps imported from Lyon. Over a few decades, the muddy river outpost began to look like a mini Paris in the tropics, where monsoon rains hammered down on red-tiled roofs and trams rolled past cafes serving both escargot and fish sauce. By 1880, the population had jumped to 35,000, including 3,000 French. By 1939, it was 500,000, including 12,000 French citizens, the largest French expatriate community outside France itself. Street after street carried French names that locals still whisper in nostalgia. Rue Catinat became Dong Coi, the Champs-Élysées of Saigon. Boulevard Notre-Dame became Le Douane, lined with rubber tycoons' mansions. Rue Paul Blanchy became Hai Ba Trung, home to silk shops and brothels. Quai de Belgique became Tun Duc Tang, the bustling port wharf. Every morning, French officials in crisp white linen suits and pith helmets rode horse-drawn carriages from leafy villas into Cao and Tan Dinh neighborhoods to the opulent governor's palace. At sunset, the terrace of the Continental Hotel buzzed with journalists, spies, opium traders, and adventurers trading stories over absinthe. Somerset Maugham drank here in 1923, capturing the exotic allure in his short stories. André Malraux plotted anti-colonial revolutions here in the 1920s before becoming France's culture minister. Graham Greene sat in room 214 from 1951 to 1954, starting the quiet American amid the First Indochina War's chaos. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the clink of glasses, the rustle of newspapers, and the whispers of deals that would shape the fate of an entire colony. By the 1950s and 60s, American dollars replaced French francs. After the 1954 Geneva Accords, Saigon became the capital of the Republic of Vietnam, South Vietnam, swollen with refugees from the north. It housed half the country's factories, the only stock exchange south of Tokyo, and a nightlife so legendary that U.S. pilots on R&R from Korea and Vietnam flew here just for the weekend, dancing in bars like the Maxim or Caravel rooftop while flares lit up the horizon. In those years, the city felt like it was living 3 lives at once: a war zone, a business hub, and a playground where people tried to forget, for a few hours, that the front line was never really far away. In 1968, at its wartime peak, Saigon had over 4.5 million people crammed into an area smaller than today's District 1 and District 3 combined, with slums sprawling along the canals. Families built shacks from scrap wood and tin, children played beside polluted waterways, and yet the city kept pulsing. Markets opened at dawn, cinemas filled up at night, and weddings were still held even as sirens wailed in the distance. Then came the fateful day, April 30th, 1975. North Vietnamese tanks from the 203rd Armored Brigade crashed through the iron gates of the presidential palace at 10:45 a.m. South Vietnamese President Duong Van Minh surrendered unconditionally. The city fell silent for a few days amid looting and confusion, and when it woke up again, Saigon had a new official name, Ho Chi Minh City, honoring the revolutionary leader who died 6 years earlier. For millions of people, that day marked the end of one world and the beginning of another, a line in history that still divides memories, families, and stories about what the city once was and what it would become. Saigon isn't just a story written in history books. It's carved into bricks, arches, rooftops, and balconies that have watched empires rise and fall. In this part, we're going to walk through 8 of the most iconic buildings, where old Saigon and modern Ho Chi Minh City still exist side by side. If you've ever strolled downtown and looked up without really knowing what you were seeing, this is where the pieces start to click into place. Notre-Dame Cathedral Basilica. Construction began in 1863 under Bishop Dominique Lefebvre, finished 1880, using over 40,000 red bricks shipped from Marseille and stained glass from Chartres workshops. No steel reinforcement at all, it has stood through earthquakes, typhoons, and wars purely on French engineering arrogance. During the 1963 Buddhist crisis, Protesters gathered here before self-immolations shocked the world. Today it's wrapped in scaffolding for the biggest restoration in 140 years, costing $10 million, because acid rain and pollution are eating the facade. The Virgin Mary statue in front still weeps on rainy days, drawing pilgrims. On a Sunday morning, if you stand quietly in the square, you'll hear the echo of church bells mixing with the roar of motorbikes and the clicks of tourists' cameras, the soundscape of faith and modern life colliding in one single moment. Central Post Office. Metal framework designed by Gustave Eiffel himself in 1886, before his famous tower in Paris. The two giant hand-painted maps inside from 1892 still show Cochinchine, Annam, and telegraph lines to Hanoi. It handled 100,000 letters a day in the 1930s. During World War II, Japanese occupiers used it as a command center. Now tourists queue to buy vintage stamps under the same vaulted ceiling while locals pay bills via app. A perfect blend of analog and digital. Look up and you'll see the curved iron beams arching overhead like the inside of a giant steel ribcage, holding memories of love letters, telegrams, and goodbye notes sent before people boarded ships and planes, unsure if they would ever return. Saigon Opera House. Completed in 1900 after 3 years of construction, with 800 velvet seats imported from Europe, only French officers and elite Vietnamese allowed in the old days for operas like Carmen. In 1955, it hosted the South Vietnamese National Assembly. Bombed in 1965 during the war. Today it hosts the acrobatic AO show, international ballet tours, and twice-a-year K-pop concerts that sell out in minutes, with tickets starting at $20. From the outside, its ornate facade looks like it was transplanted straight from Paris and set down under the tropical sun. Inside, if you close your eyes between performances, you can almost hear 3 different eras overlapping. Colonial whispers, wartime speeches, and the cheers of Gen Z fans screaming for their favorite idols. Continental Hotel. Opened 1880 as the first luxury hotel in Indochina, the oldest continuously operating one in Vietnam. Rabindranath Tagore stayed here in 1929 during his Asia tour. Somerset Maugham wrote about its intrigue. Graham Greene drank gin here every night for 3 years while embedded as a journalist. The terrace still looks exactly the same, just with iPhones instead of typewriters, and rooms now cost $250 per night with views of the Opera House. Sit at one of those terrace tables at golden hour, and you are literally in the same seats where spies, poets, and war correspondents once argued about politics and philosophy while watching the city swirl past. The ashtrays are cleaner now, the glass is more modern, but the feeling of being at the center of something important hasn't changed. Hotel Majestic. 1925 Art Deco masterpiece at the corner of Old Catinat and the riverfront, built by Chinese businessman Hui Bon Hoa. In the 1960s, the rooftop breeze sky bar was the most romantic spot in Asia, where spies exchanged secrets over martinis. Survived a 1964 car bomb. Today it's still the best place to watch sunset over the Saigon River, with a spa added in 2010. From the rooftop, you can watch cargo ships slide past just like they did nearly a century ago, except now they share the river with dinner cruises blasting pop music and LED lights. Below you, the same curve of the river remains, even as the skyline around it has grown fangs of glass and steel. Rex Hotel. Opened Christmas 1959 as a bachelor officer's quarters for American military, originally a garage in 1927. The rooftop bar hosted the daily 5 o'clock Follies press briefings where journalists grilled U.S. officials on war progress. The plastic crown on top, added in 1959, now lights up in rainbow colors every weekend for Pride events. During the war, reporters sat here smoking and scribbling notes while helicopters thumped overhead and explosions flashed on the horizon. Today, couples take selfies against a peaceful skyline, cocktails in hand, while the same rooftop quietly remembers a time when every sunset came with a question mark. Would tomorrow be better or worse? Ben Ton Market. Current building finished 1914 after the wooden market burned down in 1912, designed in Beaux-Arts style with 4 iconic clock gates symbolizing the 4 directions. Those gates have greeted millions for 110 years, surviving floods and wars. Inside, same vendor chaos, but products evolved. Dried squid instead of opium pipes, fake Supreme hoodies instead of French perfumes. It's now a protected heritage icon and one of the most recognizable symbols of the city. Walk through its crowded aisles and you'll hear at least 3 languages being shouted over each other: Vietnamese, English, and the universal language of bargaining. The smell is a cocktail of fish sauce, incense, grilled meat, and new plastic. It's overwhelming, messy, alive, just like Saigon itself. Landmark 81. Finished 2018 after 4 years of construction, 461.2 meters tall with 81 floors, built on land that was still rice fields and slums in the early 1990s by Vingroup. From the 81st floor skydeck you can see all the way to the East Sea on a clear day, with tickets at $8. It houses Vietnam's first ice rink and an observatory that attracts 500,000 visitors yearly. At night, its LED lights ripple up the facade like a digital waterfall, visible from almost every corner of the city. For older Saigonese, it's a shocking symbol of how fast things have changed. The same ground where water buffalo once walked now hosts luxury malls, 5-star hotels, and families taking elevator rides into the clouds. Put all these places together, from the red bricks of Notre-Dame to the glass skin of Landmark 81, and you get a living timeline of Saigon in stone, steel, and light. Each building is a chapter, each facade a sentence, and when you walk these streets, you're not just sightseeing. You're literally moving through 150 years of ambition, war, survival, and reinvention, all inside a few square kilometers of one restless, unforgettable city. In the French colonial era of 1930, a middle-class Vietnamese family in Saigon earned about 40 piastres a month, equivalent to $200 today, enough for a small villa with live-in servants and weekly trips to the market for fresh durian and baguettes. The economy revolved around exporting rice, rubber from vast plantations in the highlands, and the infamous opium monopoly that funded 20% of the colonial budget. Imagine a typical morning back then, the father reading a French newspaper on a shaded veranda, children in stiff uniforms walking to Catholic schools, and the mother bargaining in the market for fish sauce and tropical fruit under the watchful eyes of colonial police. Life was unequal and deeply controlled, but for those in the middle class, it could feel strangely comfortable, a bubble of relative stability built on the backs of coolies tapping rubber trees and peasants in distant rice fields. By 1968, during the American War years, the average teacher in Saigon earned the equivalent of $80 monthly, still the highest salary in Southeast Asia outside Singapore and Japan, thanks to U.S. aid totaling $16 billion, over $140 billion adjusted for inflation. The city ran on 3 currencies at once: South Vietnamese dong for locals, French piastres for old-timers, and U.S. dollars for everything black market. Daily life in the 1960s was a whirlwind. Breakfast meant crispy banh mi with laughing cow cheese and strong tzafi suada at legendary cafes like Givril or Broded on Rue Catinat. Transport involved zipping on Honda 67 scooters, hailing colorful cyclos for short rides, or squeezing into pastel Renault 4CV taxis amid the honks. Nightlife pulsed with live Filipino bands playing Beatles and Elvis covers in rooftop bars like the Caravel, while tracer rounds and distant artillery lit up the sky like grim fireworks. It was a surreal contrast. Couples slow dancing under soft yellow lights while, just a few kilometers away, soldiers dug trenches and helicopters roared overhead. People went to cinemas, bought new clothes, fell in love, and argued about politics in cafes, all while knowing that any morning's headline could change everything. After the fall in 1975, everything ground to a halt. Hyperinflation wiped out savings, shops were nationalized under the new communist regime, and for 10 years from 1976 to 1986, people survived on government ration coupons, 13 kilograms of rice per person per month if supplies arrived, supplemented by black market smuggling from Cambodia. Hundreds of thousands fled as boat people, risking pirates and storms. The same streets that once glowed with neon bar signs went dark. Families lined up for hours with little yellow coupon booklets, hoping the rice truck wouldn't run out before their turn. Gold jewelry disappeared into hidden corners and secret deals. Photos of loved ones who had left by sea were carefully tucked into old suitcases. For many, this was the hardest decade, a time when survival meant creativity, sacrifice, and a quiet, constant fear of what might come next. The turning point came with Doi Moi economic reforms in 1986, inspired by China's opening. Within one generation, Saigon transformed from a bicycle city to one with 10 million motorbikes. Foreign investment flooded in, first from Taiwan and Japan in the 1990s for garment factories, then US and Korea in the 2000s for tech parks like Saigon High-Tech Park. New words entered everyday conversation: joint venture, foreign capital, export zone. Former state workers opened small family businesses, housewives became street vendors and then shop owners, young graduates found themselves working in glass office towers for Korean chaebol and American tech firms. If you watch old footage from the late 80s and compare it to the 2000s, It feels like hitting fast forward on a city's evolution, each year adding more neon, more traffic, more possibility. Today, Ho Chi Minh City boasts a GDP of $93 billion in 2023, contributing 27% of Vietnam's entire economy and 40% of national tax revenue with only 9% of the population. Average salary in 2025, $650 per month for office jobs, but software engineers in District 7 tech hubs pull $3,000,6,000, rivaling Bangkok. Unemployment hovers at 2.5%, but inequality shows in the contrast between Vincom luxury malls and lingering alley slums. On one corner, you'll see teenagers carrying designer shopping bags out of air-conditioned malls, tapping on the latest smartphones. 2 blocks away, you'll find 3 generations sharing a 10-square-meter room, cooking on a single gas stove and hanging laundry over a narrow alley. The city's success story is real, but so is the price some people pay to keep up with it. Traffic tells the evolution story. In the 1950s, Saigon had just 25,000 vehicles total, mostly bicycles and a few jeeps. By 2025, it's 9.2 million motorbikes plus 800,000 cars, one of the highest motorbike densities on Earth, causing epic jams but also fueling a grab-and-go culture. From above, rush hour looks like a living organism, waves of helmets in every color, flowing around buses and trucks, squeezing into any available space. For locals, it's just another Tuesday afternoon. Food, parcels, flowers, even refrigerators get delivered on 2 wheels. Entire microeconomies live and die on the back of a motorbike. Yet amid the hustle, some timeless rituals persist. Morning Tai Chi groups gathering around Turtle Lake at dawn, afternoon iced tea gossip sessions on tiny plastic stools in hidden alleys, and the evening symphony of street vendors calling out grilled pork and fish sauce aromas that waft through every neighborhood, just like in colonial days. A foreign investor checking emails on a smartphone and an elderly woman pouring coffee through a metal filter are sharing the same city, the same humid air, the same soundtrack of honks and laughter. And that's the real story of Saigon's daily life and economy, not just numbers and GDP charts, but millions of small routines, old and new, woven together into one restless, endlessly adapting tapestry. Old Saigon nightlife in the 1960s meant slow jazz at the Arc-en-Ciel Cinema, cabarets on Two-Du Street with French chanteuses, and red-light districts in Putho where GIs spent their pay. Festivals were intimate, Tet with family fireworks and lion dances in narrow alleys. You can picture it, paper lanterns swaying in the humid night air, children chasing each other in plastic sandals, the crackle of small firecrackers on the ground, and the warm glow of home-cooked meals shared on low wooden tables. The city felt smaller then, more like a village wrapped in neon, where everyone somehow knew everyone's business. Modern Saigon nightlife explodes with energy, lush nightclub pulsing with EDM until 4 a.m., rooftop bars at 50 floors overlooking the river, and Burivine Walking Street closed to traffic every weekend for backpackers and locals alike, sipping craft beer under string lights. Instead of a few jazz bands and cabarets, you now have DJs dropping remixes, bartenders flipping bottles, and smartphone screens lighting up every corner. Young people drift from bar to bar in sneakers and streetwear, while just a few blocks away, older couples still sit on plastic stools, sharing a late-night bowl of huqiu, watching the same city through completely different eyes. Music evolved from the melancholic bolero of Trin Song Sun and Pham Duet in wartime cafes, songs like DM Shua capturing lost love amid bombs, to the high-energy pop of Sun Tung MTP and global influences like Blackpink concerts at stadiums. In the past, people huddled around radios or small tape players, listening to sad songs that made them feel less alone in uncertain times. Today, Bluetooth speakers blast K-pop and V-pop in every alley, but if you walk past an old cafe late at night, you might still hear a Trin Song Sun song floating out, like a ghost from another era refusing to fade. Coffee culture shifted too, from black drips filtered slowly at your table in 1930s pavement spots to over 4,000 outlets of Highlands Coffee and Starbucks in 2025, where freelancers work on laptops amid air-conditioned comfort. Once, coffee was something you sipped slowly while reading a newspaper or chatting with a friend for hours. Now it's also a workspace, a fashion statement, a backdrop for Instagram photos. Yet the basic ritual of sitting down with a strong cup and watching the city go by hasn't really changed. But walk into any small alley at 6 a.m. and you'll still see aunties leading morning exercises with fans, grandpas playing Chinese chess under banyan trees, and the same comforting smell of faux broth that has been simmering since French times, passed down through generations. In those moments, the glass towers and brand names disappear. What remains is something older and deeper, a rhythm of life that has survived war, famine, communism, capitalism, and everything in between. The city tragically lost over 1,200 French-era villas between 1995 and 2015, demolished for gleaming condos and office towers amid rapid urbanization. But the surviving ones in District 3 and Pun 1 are now protected as national heritage, housing trendy cafes or museums. Inside these spaces, you can sip a latte under a peeling ceiling mural or read a book beside 100-year-old shutters, feeling both the wounds and the resilience of the city's past. Saigon didn't lose its soul. She just put on neon makeup, learned to navigate a Honda Wave through 6 lanes of traffic while texting and sipping SUA, and kept that mischievous, welcoming smile that made French poets dream and American GIs fall in love 100 years ago. So is the old Saigon gone forever? No. She's still there, whispering through the 120-year-old tamarind trees on Loloy Street that survived every war, in the auntie who has sold crispy bonzio on the same corner for 40 years rain or shine, in the way total strangers still smile warmly and ask Di Dao Duem when you look lost in the crowd. You won't always see her in the tourist brochures or on Instagram, but you'll feel her in small, unexpected moments. A familiar melody from a distant radio, the clink of ice in a glass of Tsafi Sua, the way the air cools for just a second before the afternoon rain. Saigon simply grew up. She got taller with skyscrapers touching the clouds, louder with constant construction hammers, faster with apps delivering everything in 15 minutes, richer with billion-dollar malls, crazier with 24/7 energy. But deep down she's the same flirtatious, resilient, slightly chaotic girl who has survived everything the 20th century could throw at her and came out stronger. If cities had personalities, Saigon would be that friend who always shows up late, talks too loud, laughs too much, sometimes breaks your heart, but somehow makes you feel more alive every time you're with her. One day, in another 20 years, today's gleaming glass towers will be tomorrow's old Saigon to the next generation, perhaps preserved as heritage amid even taller structures. Kids who are in kindergarten right now will one day tell their own stories about back in my day, Saigon was still small, while pointing at buildings you and I think are impossibly huge. That's the funny thing about this city. No matter when you arrive, someone will always tell you, you should have seen Saigon 10 years ago. If you've ever walked these streets, whether as a soldier in 1965, a refugee in 1975, or a tourist in 2025, drop your favorite memory in the comments below. Share what makes Saigon special to you. Because in the end, a city isn't just concrete and traffic. It's made of millions of personal stories, and maybe yours is one tiny thread in Saigon's huge, messy, beautiful tapestry. If you haven't been yet, book that ticket soon. Because the only constant about Saigon is, she never stays the same place twice. The skyline will change, the shopfronts will change, the slang will change, but there is a good chance that the first time you stand in the middle of Nguyen Hue or Ben Ton, you'll feel that strange mix of chaos and warmth that so many people before you have felt. Thank you for joining this time travel journey. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe exploring old Hanoi versus modern Hanoi, or the timeless Mekong Delta a century ago. Until then, keep the old soul alive, and Chow Tam beat from the Pearl of the Orient.